Now that we have our DragonFly plugin officially installed, it's now time to connect our iPad up to the DragonFly server so we can access the camera in the viewport here. To do this, I need to go up here to the DragonFly icon button at the top and choose Setup. I'm going to dock this down to our details panel over here, and you'll notice that we have our server name, DragonFly ARKit, and the port that it will be accessing. So next thing I have to do is start up my DragonFly app on my iPad, and you'll notice that it says there is no server found. So I need to start up the DragonFly plugin so it can connect to my iPad. So I'm going to come over here to our DragonFly setup, and I'm just going to choose Start. And now that it's started up, you will see that we now have this DragonFly ARKit server populated in this box here. So all I have to do is choose it, and you'll see that now my viewport is connected to my Unreal viewport. But when I turn my camera, nothing is happening yet, right? We don't have this connected to the DragonFly camera within the viewport. So we need to take one more step here and go up to this little perspective window and choose DragonFly viewport, or the shortcut command of Shift X. And once we do that, you'll see that now my iPad is connected to the viewport of the Unreal Engine. But I still can't pan my camera around yet, and we will address this in later lessons. But this is pretty much how you connect your DragonFly ARKit server to your iPad. Alright, it's time to get into all the features of the DragonFly camera. So we're going to go back up to the top here to this DragonFly icon, and we're going to choose Operation Main. And this is where all the features of the DragonFly camera exist. So I'm just going to dock this down to the side here. And normally I would like to go from the top down into the features, but I think we should get the buttons on the controller of the iPad bound first so we can start moving around our scene. So to do this, we can come down into this area right here of our movement scaling, and there's an open binding here which will open up our bind, or we can come up to the top and choose bindings. So this is where we set up our controls or our actions for the buttons on the controller of the iPad. So I'm going to set up 3 buttons, one for forward and backward movement, one for left and right, and one for up and down. So I'll just say, let's make 3 new actions right now, and we'll go to this top one, and we'll name this. We'll do our first button is going to be the forward backwards, so we'll choose this first action right here, and I can come in and name this forward underscore backward. And the next button I'm going to name left right. And the third one we're going to name up down. Up down, like so. So I'm going to choose my first forward backwards first. So we have our name. We can set a default name if we want it. And right here, if we knew the number of each button on the controller here, we could put this number in here and just start the bind. But I don't want to think about this, right? I just want an easy connection from my joystick to this button right here, this action. So to do this, I'm going to do this by holding my iPad, and I'm going to click on this bind button, right? But we also want to make sure that we have the right axes selected. So right here we have forward movement, right movement, up movement, and the focus distance. For this button, we're going to choose the forward movement, and we're going to use local space. This is just, your normal XYZ local space. and I'm going to choose bind. So to connect this button, all I have to do is select the button on my iPad, which I like for my forward, using my left button over here, and I'm going to move this button upward. And you'll see that that bound to the action, right? So now I can kind of go forward and backwards here. Let's go to the left right, and I'll pull this down so we can see what's going on. And once again, I'm going to ignore the joystick ID. This is for our left right. I'm going to come down to our axes, and I'm going to choose right movement, and I'll say bind. And then once again, I'm going to grab this button over here and move it to the right. And it bound that button to that action. Now you can see we can move left and right. All right, so we'll go to our third button, which is up, down. And I usually like my up, down on my right thumb. So we'll come down to the DragonFly axes again, and I'm going to choose up movement, bind, and then I'll push this button up like so. And now we can close this window, and now we can pan around the scene, moving forward, backwards, left, right, and up, down. And this is how you would control the binding of your joystick buttons. So in a later lesson, we will come in and do some custom actions, such as controlling our focus or takes or things like that with custom blueprint actions. Okay, we've done some binding with our controls, and now I want to talk about creating custom binds or new action bindings with blueprints. So first thing we need to do is create a blueprint. So I'm just going to right click in this folder and go to Blueprint and choose Blueprint Function Library. Once I do that, I'm going to name this DF for DragonFly, and I will call this binding. Okay, so now we will enter this blueprint right here, and we have a new function. If you don't see a new function in this layout right here, you can come up to the top and add a new function. But since this one is already highlighted, I will just name this one, and the first one we're going to create is called snapshots. All right, so this is a fairly simple setup for this one here. So I created this function, it's called snapshot, and now I need to connect it to a DragonFly function. So let's just drag out this little noodle right here, and we will go into DragonFly, and I'm going to look for snapshot. And what I'm looking for is this take snapshot right here. All right, so we've added that in, and now we've created a action that we can attach to one of our buttons. All right, so since we're here, let's make a little bit more of an advanced one. All right, so I'm going to make a new function, and this one I'm going to call recording. All right, so with the recording, we're going to want this function to not only start our recording, but stop our recording. So we're going to have to make a little bit more of an advanced network. So let's pull this out again, and the first thing we're going to look for is a branch. All right, so we have our branch, and now we need to create a, come in here and hook this function up over here. So I'm going to pull this out, and I'm going to look for DragonFly recording. And we're looking for is recording right there. So that's connected for us already. And then we need to create two more functions here, a start and an end function. All right, so I'm going to drag out this true value, and then I'm going to type in end, recording. Let's type in DragonFly first. Recording. And we're looking for the end DragonFly recording. So let's put end in here. And there we go. There's end DragonFly recording. And then we also need to create a start. So DragonFly start recording. And there it is. All right, so now we've made a more advanced network here that will also start and end our recording. So we need to compile these actions first. So let's just say compile. And we can also save. And then I'm going to minimize this. So now we're back in our binding. So we would say open binding right here. And this time we're going to, instead of an axis binding like we did here, we're going to create a new action. So I'll create 2 of them, right? So our first one, we will name snapshots. All right. And in this function, we'll come down here to our function. And with my blueprint highlighted, I can just hit this arrow to populate that into the target library. And then we have to choose the function. So you see we have 2 functions we created. One is for recording and one is for snapshot. So I'll choose snapshot for this one. And to apply this to a button, we're going to do similar that we did before. We're going to click on bind, and then we will press down the button that we want to start this. So I will choose my Y button for this action. So I'm going to say bind. And then right here, I'm going to press on my Y button, and you see that that bound that action. All right, so let's go back to our recording one, and we will call this record. All right, so once again, I will highlight my blueprint and place it in the target library, and then choose recording for my function. And then once again, I'm going to click on bind, and this time I'm going to choose my B button right there. Okay, so we've created 2 custom functions for our binding, right? So if we come over to our snapshots here now, and I click on my Y button, you'll see that I have a brand new snapshot. Let's refresh. And there's my new snapshot I just created with my button. Okay, so let's test our recording as well. So I have my camera set up. He's looking at our actor, and I'm going to hit the B button, and you see that that will start recording, and then I will hit the B button again, and that will stop my recording. So this is how you can create some advanced binding using custom functions with blueprints. Let's talk about location and Z orientation now. So at the moment, you see I'm where I placed myself earlier, and I want to go back to the grid now. I don't like where I am at, so I can go back to set location to 0, 0, 0, or actually it's reset camera to 0, and now I am at the grid. I am at 0, 0, 0 in world space. Now maybe I want to put myself in a starting position within this scene. So maybe I want to go up 300 units. And then maybe I want to go -1000. And you'll see that this puts me in a specific location in this scene. Now also my camera is facing forward, but my scene is tilted. So I want to rotate my camera so everything is, straight in front of me. So I'm going to start to rotate my camera right here. And then now you can see that I've straightened everything out. So I don't have to rotate my body to fit the location that I want to be pointing at. But say I move around the scene now, right? And I'm all the way over here now, and I want to set myself back to that position where I, previously set myself. So I'm going to choose Reset Camera to 0, 0, 0. Now I am back at that starting point that I put in location right here, and I can begin shooting again. I don't like working this way. We have something in DragonFly called snapshots right here, and this is where we're really going to place ourselves where we want to take our camera moves. So I would leave this alone. The only one I would mess with right here is the Z orientation, and really I want to set everything here back to 0 and even my rotation, and that is basically how you can use these locations, but I do not recommend it. I recommend creating snapshots. Let's talk about scaling now. What scaling is basically adding speed to your movement to your controller. So right now you see my scaling is 1. So this is the speed that I'm moving around with my buttons. If I want to move around the scene faster, so let's say maybe 10 times faster, I click on 10x, which is 10 times faster. So now you can see I can really fly around this scene. So if I'm wanting to do a fly through, like a plane type of scene, I could really set this speed up. If I ever want to divide this in half, or I can say half right here. So now you'll see that number is 5. So I'm half the speed of 10. If I want to go half of that, 2.5. There we are. Now we're going slower. If I ever want to reset to the value to 1, I just say 1. And then I can also add increments of 1, just with this +1. Now it's 2 or 3. And now I can move back in. Add a 4th. And there we go. So this is basically the speed of which you're moving around through the scene. Let's talk a little bit about the Spaces feature now. So I'm just going to bring in a dummy camera. And you'll notice that Unreal's coordinate system is a left-handed coordinate system. So the forward motion of this camera would be in X, the up and down would be in Z, and the left and right would be in Y. So even though we rotate this -90, as long as we're in local space, you can see that my forward motion is in X, right? So by default, if we look at this, the local space, or the spaces, is set to local. So let's take a look at this. So if I put my X to 2 and my Y to 0.5, you'll notice that my forward motion has been scaled by 2. I'm 2 times faster. And my left and right is now half of what it would have been before. But by changing to world coordinates, what we do is reverse those roles. So now my X is half, and my side to side has been multiplied by 2. So a really common use, or a really good way to use this world system, is by scaling the Z down to 0. So if you're doing, walking around the stage and you're doing a handheld camera move, this will help eliminate that bounce that you would have by walking around the room. So this will helps stabilize your up and down motion while you are walking around the room. So this is a really good feature right here, and I use this quite often. So lastly, let's take a look at, let's set this back to 1, and we're going to look at this hybrid coordinate space called local aligned up. This feature has a very interesting use. This option will allow you, so let's take a look at this camera right here. If I rotate this camera, you'll see that my local rotation is in this direction, but if we're in world space, now my coordinates from my camera and the world space are in conflict with each other. They're misaligned. So by turning on this feature, this will eliminate that misalignment of these two coordinates. So if I take this back up to 2 and 0.5, you'll see that the camera is constrained to the horizontal plane. Even though I'm scaling the local axis, my local axis is misaligned with the global up. So if we take this down to 0, you'll see that that is still constrained to that horizontal plane. And this is the difference between local, world, and local up aligned. Alright, I have my scaling set back to 1, and let's move it up to 10 times. So now you can see here's my 10 times, and I can also control the speed of my joysticks right here with joystick speed. So if I want to do a fractional, maybe half or 25% of this speed, instead of using these buttons here, I can do it here as well. So say I want to go half speed of 10, I'll say 0.5, and then you'll see that now this is at half the speed. If I want to go 1/10, which would be back down to 1, I'd say 0.1, and then now we're really at the speed of 1 again, and it's a fraction of what this number is. So you can control your scaling by these numbers here, or if you want to do a percentage of these numbers, then you would do that through the joystick speed. Let's take a look at sensor sizes now. So right now you can see that we are using a 16:9 film aspect ratio, and anytime we want to change this to match a particular camera, we can come in from this list right here. So maybe we want to do a IMAX 70mm, then you'll see that the aspect ratio changes to match this sensor. If for any reason we have this sensor preset up here as well, so we can just come in and start clicking through and see which sensors we like. So here's a Super 8, here's a 16mm, 35mm, but modern day format is 16:9. But if we start to look at how features are done now, they're used with a wider aspect ratio. So besides the presets that we have here, you can create a custom sensor for yourself. So you see here I have this sensor guide, and this isn't everything for sure, but say we want to recreate this ARRI Alexa, which is a very popular lens at the moment. We can put these numbers in and create our own preset. So all I have to do is say create new sensor. I will name this. I will call this the ARRI Alexa 16:9 and then I will put the sensor height. So from this guide I have over here, it's 23.76 by 0.37. All right, so now when I click on here, now I have a brand new sensor that I've added to my sensor list. So if there's any particular sensors you like to shoot with and they're not in this list, you can create your own. If for any reason you want to get rid of a sensor, all you have to do is, let's pick another one up here with the check mark. Then I can select this and I can say delete sensor. Let's take a look at lenses now. You can see here that we are shooting with a 12mm prime, and if we ever want to change that to say a 30 or 50mm, we can just choose this from our pop-down list. So if I choose 50mm, so now I'm going to have to zoom back. Let me ×2 my joystick. All right, so there's my 50mm. I can change that to an 85. Then I'm going to be in a little bit more. We can also come up to our DragonFly list here and look at the lens presets, and you'll see that everything in this pop down is available in this list as well. So if you know what type of lens you want to shoot with, you can just choose it from this list. And if you ever want to make a custom lens, you can do that as well. So as long as you know the numbers, millimeter, and all that stuff from the manufacturer, you can just come up here and create your own lens presets, and then you can shoot however you like. If you ever want to delete one of these, then just select it and say delete. And that's how lenses work. It's pretty basic, pretty simple. So yeah, just pick a lens and have fun. Now we're going to take a look at our focus method and focus target and distance. So right now our focus method is set to none, so everything is pretty much in focus. But if we want to manually focus on, say, this guy right here, then we can change this to manual. But we can't quite see how we're going to focus on him at the moment. So what we want to do is click on this little highlight plane, and you don't see anything at the moment, but if I start to increase this number, you'll see this purple plane come into view. So if I can adjust this, it's very sensitive. Let's say 1400, maybe even lower, 1300. Let's take it a little lower. All right, so now we're focused on our guy, and this is our focal plane for this setup. So we can disable this, and if we ever want to offset our focus, we have this offset right here. So now I can start to pull this up or down, and this will probably work better when we get into our tracked, right? So I'll just put this back at 0 for now. All right, and now we're going to try a different method called tracking. And with tracking, I can pick whatever I want my camera to be focused on. So right now you see there's nothing. So I'm going to click on this eyedropper, and I'm going to click on my character, and you're going to see it shows my SK mannequin, but it doesn't know what to focus on yet. So now I'm going to come in here, and here is a list of all the skeleton joints within this character. So I want to focus on the head. So let's look for head right here. So now we're on the head. So if we come in, we will always be focused in on this head. And you see, like, the closer I get in on him, my background starts to get that nice depth of field, right? So that's working out pretty well. And if I ever want to offset my focus point, maybe I want to shift it to back here, or maybe even this box back here, now I can start to offset my focus. All right, so this works out really well. When I have this character running around the scene and I want to stay focused on him, then most likely I'm going to use a focus target.